far beyond the quiet stars of the outer galaxy, something terrible was happening. For many years, the galaxy had lived in peace. Hundreds of alien civilizations traded, explored space, and built great cities among the stars. The Galactic Council believed the age of war was long over, but peace can break very quickly. At the edge of known space, a mining colony on the planet, read as 9, suddenly went silent. The colony had over 5 million workers from many species. One moment, everything was normal. The next moment, every signal stopped. No messages, no distress call, only silence. At first, the council believed it was a simple accident, maybe a power failure or a meteor storm. They sent a small patrol fleet to check the colony. 3 ships arrived near Redis 9. What they saw shocked them. The planet was burning. Cities were destroyed. Space stations floated in broken pieces. Thousands of ships were drifting in space like dead metal. But the worst thing was this. There were no survivors. The patrol fleet quickly scanned the area. Something strange appeared on their sensors. Huge organic ships were moving through the debris field. They were not normal ships. They looked alive. Their surfaces moved like skin. Long black shapes twisted through space like giant creatures. The patrol captain felt cold fear. He whispered to his crew, "What are those things?" Before anyone could answer, the creatures attacked. In seconds, the patrol ships were surrounded. Dark energy beams tore through their shields. The alien ships were crushed like fragile glass. The patrol fleet was destroyed in less than 2 minutes. Only one emergency beacon escaped before the last ship exploded. The message reached the Galactic Council, and for the first time in centuries, the Council felt fear. Within hours, the Council called an emergency meeting. Representatives from the most powerful species arrived quickly. The chamber was filled with tall insect-like beings, glowing energy creatures, reptilian commanders, and many others. At the center of the room, a hologram of Redis 9 appeared. The destruction was clear. One of the council elders spoke slowly. This attack was not piracy. This was not a natural disaster. Another member finished the thought. This was an invasion. Silence filled the chamber. Then a military commander from the Xylar Empire stepped forward. His species had ruled a powerful star fleet for thousands of years. "We will send a battle fleet," he said with confidence. "Whatever destroyed that colony will be eliminated." Many council members felt relieved. The Xylar fleet was legendary. Within 2 days, 50 warships from the Xylar Empire jumped to the Redis 9 system. The fleet commander expected an easy mission. He was wrong. The Xylar fleet entered the system carefully. At first, everything looked quiet. Broken stations and destroyed ships floated around the planet. The commander ordered a full scan. Then the sensors started screaming. Dozens, then hundreds, then thousands of signals appeared. The strange living ships were everywhere. They were hiding inside asteroid fields and debris clouds. The Xylar commander suddenly understood the danger. "Battle formation," he shouted. But it was already too late. The swarm attacked. Black organic ships rushed forward like hungry predators. Energy beams struck the Xylar warships. Their shields failed almost instantly. Missiles launched. Laser cannons fired. Explosions filled space. But the enemy ships did not slow down. Even when damaged, they kept moving. More and more creatures arrived. The Xylar fleet fought with everything they had. But the battle only lasted 12 minutes. 12 minutes. After that, nothing remained of the Xylar fleet except drifting metal. The last transmission from the commander was filled with panic. "This is not a fleet, this is a swarm. They are endless." The message ended with silence. News of the defeat spread across the galaxy like wildfire. The Xylar Empire had never lost a battle so quickly. Fear began to grow. The enemy was soon given a name. The Varkal Swarm. No one knew where they came from. No one knew how long they had existed. But one thing became very clear. They were spreading. System after system began to fall. Colonies disappeared. Trade routes were destroyed. Entire planets were wiped out. Every fleet sent against the swarm was destroyed. The galaxy had faced wars before, but nothing like this. This enemy did not negotiate. They did not surrender. They did not stop. They only consumed and destroyed. Within months, panic filled the Galactic Council. For the first time in history, the most powerful civilizations were losing. During another emergency meeting, the council chamber was filled with tension. Reports were worse every day. The swarm had already destroyed 37 star systems. Millions of lives were lost. One elder spoke with a shaking voice. If this continues, the entire galaxy may fall. The room became silent again. Then a smaller council member slowly stood up. His species was not powerful or famous, but he had studied ancient records. There may be another option, he said carefully. Many members turned toward him. What option? Someone asked. The small alien activated a hologram. A blue and green planet appeared. Earth, he said. Some council members looked confused. Others began to laugh. Humans, one member said with disbelief. That young species? They joined the council only a few decades ago. They're explorers and traders, not warriors. But the small alien continued speaking. You are correct. Humans are young, but their history is unusual. He showed new images. Violent storms, dangerous oceans, giant predators. Humans evolved on a death world, he explained. A planet where survival itself is a constant battle. Many council members became quiet. The alien continued. Humans fought wars among themselves for thousands of years before reaching the stars. Their technology may not be the most advanced, but their ability to fight and adapt is remarkable. A reptilian commander crossed his arms. You think this young species can defeat the swarm? The small alien shook his head slowly. I do not know. He looked around the chamber. But right now we are running out of options. The council argued for many hours. Some believed asking humans for help would be useless. Others believed it was worth trying. Finally, the council leader raised his hand. The room became silent. We have lost too many worlds already, the leader said. If there is even a small chance, we must try. He turned toward the communication officers. Send a message to Earth. The message was simple. No politics. No long speeches. Only a desperate request. To the United Earth government. The galaxy is under attack. An unstoppable enemy known as the Varkal Swarm is destroying entire civilizations. We request assistance. Without help, the galaxy will fall. The message was transmitted across space. It would take several hours to reach Earth. Then the Council waited out on Earth. The message arrived at a massive orbital station above the planet. Human communication officers quickly realized how serious it was. Within minutes, the message reached world leaders. A secret meeting was called immediately, deep underground. Inside a secure command center, the leaders of Earth gathered around a large table. Military commanders, scientists, and government officials were all present. The message from the Galactic Council played on a large screen. When it ended, the room became quiet. Everyone understood the situation. Finally, a human admiral spoke. So the galaxy needs help. A scientist added quietly. If the reports are true, this swarm could eventually reach our region of space. Another commander nodded, which means this war will find us sooner or later. The room remained silent for several seconds. Then the president of Earth looked around the table. What are our chances? She asked. The admiral thought carefully before answering. Unknown, he said honestly, but one thing is certain. He looked directly at the screen showing the destroyed planets. If we do nothing, this enemy will only grow stronger. The president slowly nodded. Then we have a decision to make. She stood up. Do we hide and hope the swarm never finds Earth? Or do we fight? The answer came quickly. Humans had never been a species that liked hiding. The admiral stood up. Humanity does not run from a fight. Several commanders nodded in agreement. The president looked at them all. Then she gave the order that would change the future of the galaxy. Prepare the fleets. Far above Earth, inside massive shipyards around the Moon and Mars, warning lights suddenly turned on. Huge factories began to move. Warships that had been resting for years started powering up. Engines warmed. Weapon systems activated. Thousands of human soldiers received new orders. The message from Earth spread across the solar system. Humanity was preparing for war. and across the stars, the desperate alien civilizations had no idea what was coming. But soon, the galaxy would witness an unexpected turning point, because when the galaxy screamed for help, humanity was about to answer. Rocket the message from Earth spread across the solar system within minutes. For most of human history, space had been a place of exploration and trade. Human ships traveled between planets, carried cargo, and studied distant stars. Warships existed, but they rarely left their bases. Now everything was changing. Inside the massive shipyards orbiting the moon, thousands of workers rushed through long metal corridors. Giant construction arms moved slowly around half-finished warships. For years, those ships had been waiting quietly. Now they were waking up. Huge engines started glowing with power. Energy reactors hummed deep inside the metal bodies of the ships. Lights flashed across the docks as engineers checked every system. One worker looked at the massive battleship floating outside the station window. It was enormous. The ship was almost 10 kilometers long. Its armor was thick enough to survive heavy attacks. Large railguns ran along its sides like giant metal spears. He whispered quietly to himself. So it's finally happening. On Mars, another shipyard was even busier. Human engineers moved quickly between control panels. Holographic displays showed dozens of fleet formations. A young technician turned to his supervisor. Are all fleets really mobilizing? The supervisor nodded. Every single one. The technician looked surprised. That means thousands of ships. Yes, the supervisor said calmly. Humanity is sending everything. Far above Jupiter, the largest military base in the solar system was already preparing for departure. The first human armada was gathering. Hundreds of ships floated in formation. Destroyers, cruisers, carriers, heavy battleships, drone carriers loaded with thousands of autonomous fighters. Each ship had been designed for one purpose: war. Inside the command ship HHS Titan, Admiral Marcus Hale stood in front of a large observation window. Outside, the fleet stretched across space like a metal ocean. A young officer approached him. Admiral, final preparation reports are coming in. Hale nodded slowly. Status of weapons? All systems ready. Shield arrays? Fully operational. The officer hesitated before asking the next question. Admiral, do we really know what we're facing? Hale looked out at the fleet again. We know enough, he said quietly. The swarm destroys everything it touches. The officer swallowed nervously. And if they are stronger than us? The admiral turned and gave a calm smile. Then we fight harder. Meanwhile, on Earth, billions of people were watching the news. Every major channel was showing the same images. Alien worlds burning. Destroyed star fleets. The mysterious enemy known as the Varkal Swarm. Fear spread quickly among the population. But something else spread too. Determination. Humans had faced danger before. Asteroid threats. Global wars. Natural disasters. And every time humanity survived, people began sending messages to the fleet. Short messages. Simple words. Good luck. Come home safe. Save them. Many soldiers watched these messages before leaving. One Marine quietly recorded a message for his family. Don't worry, he said with a small smile. We'll stop them. Several hours later, the Armada was ready across the solar system. Fleets gathered near the outer jump gates. More than 3,000 warships waited in silence. The largest human military force ever assembled. Inside the Titan Command Center, the main screen showed the final countdown. Jump coordinates had been calculated. Their destination was the Valoran system. It was one of the last major alien systems still fighting against the swarm. If it fell, the enemy would gain control of an important trade route across the galaxy. The Galactic Council had already sent several fleets to defend it. All of them were destroyed. The Valoran defenders were now alone. Admiral Hale looked around the command room. Every officer was ready. Status report, he said. A navigation officer answered first. Jump systems online. Another officer spoke. Fleet formation stable. Weapons control confirmed. All weapons locked and ready. Hale nodded slowly. Then he gave the order. Prepare for long-range jump. far away in the Valoran system. The situation was already desperate. Alien defense stations fired endless streams of energy beams toward the attacking swarm. The enemy ships looked like dark living creatures. Thousands of them filled the sky. Valoran defense fleets tried to hold the line, but they were losing. Every minute more ships were destroyed. Inside the Valoran command station, a tired alien commander stared at the battle outside. His fleet had already lost half its ships. A communication officer suddenly shouted, "Commander, we are receiving a signal from the Galactic Council." The commander turned quickly. "What does it say?" The officer read the message. "Reinforcements are on the way." The commander sighed heavily. "We have heard that before." But the officer looked confused. "There is more." "What?" "The message says the reinforcements are human." The commander blinked slowly. "Humans." Many officers in the room looked uncertain. The human species was still considered young, compared to ancient galactic civilizations. No one expected them to fight a war this large. Before the commander could respond, the station sensors suddenly reacted. A loud alarm filled the room. Massive energy spike detected. Multiple jump signatures forming. The commander rushed toward the main screen. "What is happening?" The sensor officer looked shocked. "There are thousands of incoming ships." Back inside the Titan, the jump countdown reached 0. Admiral Hale spoke one final command. "Execute jump." The stars outside the fleet suddenly twisted and stretched. Space itself seemed to bend. Then the entire Armada disappeared. For a brief moment, nothing existed except darkness. Then the fleet arrived. In the Valoran system, space suddenly exploded with light. Thousands of human ships appeared at once. The alien defenders stared in disbelief. The human armada stretched across space like a massive steel wall. Warships powered their weapons. Drone carriers opened their launch bays. The swarm paused for the first time during the battle. Inside the Valoran command station, silence filled the room. The commander whispered slowly, "That is a human fleet?" The sensor officer nodded weakly. "Yes, and it is enormous." Admiral Hale watched the battlefield carefully. The swarm ships were everywhere. Even for a fleet this large, the enemy numbers were terrifying. But Hale did not hesitate. "Fleet commanders," he said calmly, "target the swarm front line." Weapons officers began locking targets. Railguns powered up. Missile systems loaded. Drone squadrons prepared for launch. Hale raised his hand. "On my command." The entire fleet waited. Thousands of human ships aimed their weapons. Then Hale spoke the order. "Fire." The first human attack was like a storm. Massive railguns fired metal rounds at incredible speed. The projectiles tore through several swarm ships instantly. Missile swarms followed. Hundreds of warheads exploded across the battlefield. Drone fighters rushed forward like angry insects, attacking the enemy from every direction. For the first time since the war began, the Varkal swarm stopped advancing. Several of their ships exploded. Others were heavily damaged. Inside the Valoran command station, alien officers stared at the battle in shock. The humans were actually pushing the swarm back. The commander whispered in disbelief. "They are winning the first exchange." But the battle was far from over. The swarm quickly reacted. Thousands of enemy ships changed direction. They rushed toward the human fleet. Admiral Hale watched the incoming wave calmly. He had expected this. "Defensive formations," he ordered. Human ships shifted positions smoothly. Shield systems strengthened. More drone fighters launched into space. The next phase of the battle was beginning. And across the galaxy, many civilizations were watching the reports coming from Valoran. For the first time since the swarm appeared, there was a small spark of hope. The battle in the Valoran system had only just begun. Across the dark space near the dying star, thousands of ships were moving like two massive storms about to collide. On one side was the Varkal swarm, living ships, black and twisted, moving like predators in deep water. Their surfaces moved slowly like breathing skin. Their weapons glowed with dark energy. On the other side was the human armada, cold steel warships, shining engines, and thousands of machines built for war. Two completely different kinds of power. Two different ways of survival. and now they were about to crash into each other. Inside the command bridge of the human flagship HHS Titan, Admiral Marcus Hale stood calmly while the battlefield moved across the giant holographic screen. Red lights showed the enemy ships. Blue lights showed the human fleet, and the red lights were spreading fast. A tactical officer spoke quickly. "Admiral, the swarm is reorganizing. They are forming attack clusters." Another officer added, "Enemy numbers still greatly exceed ours." Hale nodded slowly. He had expected this. The swarm had destroyed many powerful fleets before. They were not stupid creatures. They learned and adapted quickly. But humanity had something the swarm had not faced before. Creativity. Launched the first drone wave. Hale ordered, across the human fleet, massive carrier ships opened their launch bays. Thousands of small fighter drones rushed into space. They were fast, small, and extremely dangerous. Unlike human pilots, the drones had no fear. They moved in perfect coordination, guided by powerful combat computers. Within seconds, the drone swarm spread across the battlefield. The Varkal ships reacted immediately. Dark energy beams fired toward the incoming machines. Many drones exploded, but hundreds more slipped through the defensive fire. They reached the outer layer of the swarm formation. Then they attacked. Small missiles slammed into the organic hulls of the enemy ships. Explosions ripped open the living metal. For the first time, the Velour defenders saw something new. The swarm ships were bleeding. A strange dark liquid leaked into space from damaged areas. The alien commander, watching the battle, whispered slowly, "So they can be hurt." But the swarm quickly adapted. More ships moved forward, forming a living wall between the drones and their main fleet. Large tentacle-like weapons extended from their hulls. These weapons fired wide waves of energy. Dozens of drones were destroyed in seconds. The human attack slowed. Inside the Titan, a weapons officer spoke quickly. "Drone losses rising fast." Hale remained calm. That was expected. He turned toward the main tactical screen. "Prepare railgun volleys." Human battleships moved slightly forward in formation. Their massive railguns began charging. Each weapon used magnetic power to launch solid metal projectiles at extreme speed. These weapons did not rely on explosions. They relied on pure kinetic force. The first volley fired. The projectiles moved so fast that they were almost invisible. They struck the swarm ships like cosmic bullets. One enemy vessel was completely torn apart. Another ship split in half. A third ship spun wildly as its core was destroyed. The Valoran defense station watched in shock. They had never seen weapons like this. Most galactic fleets relied heavily on energy beams. Humanity used something far simpler. Metal moving very, very fast. And it worked. But the swarm was not defeated yet. More enemy ships poured into the system. Thousands of them. The human fleet was still outnumbered almost 3-1. A new wave of swarm ships rushed toward the human front line. This time they did not attack slowly. They charged directly forward. Inside the Titan, alarms began flashing. Enemy closing fast. Distance decreasing. Admiral Hale gave new orders immediately. Forward cruisers, hold position. Destroyers moved to flank. Human ships moved quickly. Cruisers strengthened their shields and prepared heavy weapons. Fast destroyers moved the sides of the battlefield, preparing to attack from new angles. The swarm ships reached firing range. Dark beams filled space. Several human ships were hit. One destroyer exploded. Another cruiser lost its engines. For a moment, it looked like the swarm might break through the human line. But then something unexpected happened. Humanity had arrived, and the Armada had only just begun to fight. Rocket from behind the human fleet. A second group of ships suddenly accelerated forward. These were not battleships. They were missile carriers. Large vessels designed to carry huge numbers of long-range weapons. Their launch tubes opened. Hundreds of missiles fired at once. Then hundreds more. Then thousands. The missiles spread across space like a giant storm. Each one carried advanced targeting systems. They avoided enemy fire and searched for weak points in the swarm ships. Explosions filled the battlefield. Several Varkal vessels were destroyed at once. Others were damaged and slowed down. The human line held strong. Inside the Valoran command station, the alien officers stared in disbelief. The humans were not only fighting, they were controlling the battle. Admiral Hale watched the enemy movement carefully. He noticed something important. The swarm ships were focusing heavily on the front line. They were ignoring the outer edges of the battlefield. Hale smiled slightly. That is their mistake. He turned toward the communication officer, signaled a strike group, far away from the main battle. Hidden behind a group of asteroids, another human fleet was waiting. These ships had arrived with the Armada, but stayed hidden during the early battle. They were fast attack cruisers. Their engines were already running. When the signal arrived, their commander spoke one simple order: full speed. The strike group rushed toward the battlefield. Their direction was not toward the main swarm fleet. They were heading straight for the swarm command cluster. Sensors had detected that several large ships in the center of the enemy formation were controlling the rest of the swarm. If those ships were destroyed, the swarm might lose coordination. The strike group moved quickly through the chaos of the battlefield. Swarm ships noticed them too late. Human railguns fired at close range. Missiles followed. The command cluster was hit hard. One massive swarm ship exploded. Another was heavily damaged. The remaining ships tried to retreat, but the human cruisers continued firing. Within minutes, the command cluster was destroyed. Something strange happened across the battlefield. The swarm ships suddenly began moving differently. Their attacks became less organized. Some ships continued fighting. Others moved randomly. Several even crashed into each other. Inside the Titan, the sensor officer looked shocked. Admiral, enemy coordination dropping rapidly. Hale nodded slowly. Just as expected, without their command ships, the swarm had lost part of their control system. They were still dangerous, but now they were vulnerable. Hale gave the next order. All fleets advance. The human armada moved forward together. Battleships fired heavy railgun rounds. Destroyers launched missile waves. Drone fighters attacked damaged ships. The swarm ships were pushed backward. One by one, enemy vessels exploded. For the first time since the war began, the Varkal swarm was retreating. Across the Valoran system, alien defense forces watched the impossible happen. The enemy that had destroyed dozens of civilizations was being pushed back. A Valoran officer whispered quietly, "The humans are actually winning." The commander slowly nodded. "Yes." Then he added something no one in the room had expected to say. "Prepare our remaining ships." The officer looked surprised. "For what, Commander?" The commander stared at the human fleet on the screen. "We are joining the fight." For the first time in the battle, the Valoran defense fleet moved forward again, side by side with humanity. And across the galaxy, new reports began spreading. The unstoppable swarm had finally been stopped, not by ancient empires, not by advanced alien technology, but by a young species from a dangerous blue world, a species that refused to surrender, a species called humanity. And the war was far from over. Rocket the Valoran system was quiet, but only for a moment. The Varkal swarm had retreated, yes, but it was regrouping. Far beyond the outer rim of the system, new waves of the living ships stirred. Thousands more emerged from dark corners of space, moving like shadows through asteroid fields. Their organic hulls pulsed with alien energy, and their tentacle-like weapons glowed in anticipation of destruction. The swarm was not defeated. It was calculating. Inside the bridge of the HHS Titan, Admiral Marcus Hale stood silently, staring at the holographic map. Each red dot represented a swarm vessel. Each dot was a reminder. The enemy was still dangerous, still relentless. The system stars flickered against the blackness of space as the Armada held its formation, waiting for the next strike. A tactical officer approached Hale nervously. "Sir, the swarm is splitting into 3 main clusters. They're attempting a pincer maneuver from the northern and southern asteroid belts." Hale nodded slowly. "Good. Let them move. It will make their destruction easier." The officer's brow furrowed. "Sir, you're not afraid?" Hale gave a faint smile. "Fear is a luxury the galaxy cannot afford. We do not fight afraid. We fight smart." Meanwhile, Thousands of kilometers closer to the outer belt, a human strike force prepared. They were smaller ships, fast and heavily armed, designed for precision attacks. These were the hunters, fighters, bombers, and stealth frigates, built for one purpose: to strike deep into enemy territory. Captain Lydia Chun, commanding a squadron of stealth frigates, checked her ship systems. Her hands moved over the controls with practiced precision. Weapons ready. Shields at full. Stealth field operational. She turned to her squadron leader. "This is it, team. We move together. We strike hard, and we leave nothing behind." Her squadron whispered acknowledgments over the comms. There was no fear. There was only determination. Every human aboard those ships knew the stakes. Failure was not an option. Back at the Armada, Hale activated the main communication channel. His voice carried over thousands of ships. "Attention, all units. The enemy is splitting. Their formation is weakening. We attack together. Heavy weapons target the northern cluster. Railgun volleys to the south. Drone swarms engage all remaining ships. And the strike force led by Captain Chun, you have a special mission: destroy the swarm's command core. Humanity cannot afford a second pincer." There was silence for a heartbeat. Then thousands of voices, ship commanders, captains, officers, replied in unison, "Acknowledged." The first wave of railgun volleys fired. The sound of space did not carry, but the energy was visible in the void. Red and blue explosions lit the darkness as the Varkal ships were shredded. Every strike was precise, every movement calculated. Humanity was not just fighting. They were orchestrating a symphony of destruction. Captain Chen's squadron moved like shadows between asteroids. The stealth fields made them invisible to the swarm sensors. For hours, they drifted, waiting for the perfect moment. And then they found it. A massive organic vessel hovered in the center of the northern cluster. Its hull pulsed with dark energy. Tentacle-like appendages extended from its body, sending orders to the swarm. This was the heart of the enemy, the command core. Chun whispered into her comms. "Target acquired. Weapons ready." Her frigate fired first. Small, precise missiles embedded in the core's hull. Energy rippled across the vessel as the first hit registered. The swarm reacted instantly, sending waves of attackers toward Chen's squadron. "Hold formation," she commanded. "Stay on target." The human frigates danced between enemy fire, launching continuous waves of missiles and energy pulses. One by one, the tendrils of the command ship were severed. Sparks and alien fluid spilled into space. The core began to shudder violently. Then, with a final, deafening pulse, the vessel erupted. The explosion rippled to the northern cluster. Nearby swarm ships were destroyed instantly, and many more were thrown into chaos. Back in the Titan, Hale watched the sensor readouts. Northern cluster neutralized. His tactical officer reported. Southern clusters faltering under railgun fire. Drone swarms are performing perfectly. Enemy losses are massive. Hale nodded. Good. Maintain pressure. Do not let them regroup. The human fleet advanced, moving as one entity. Massive battleships fired continuous volleys. Drones attacked from all angles, weaving between the larger ships. Missile strikes exploded across the enemy formation like a storm of fire. Even the Valoran allies, who had been hiding on the outskirts, joined in. Their ships moved cautiously but with precision, striking the enemy wherever humanity left a gap. For the first time in centuries, the Varkal swarm was being pushed back, not retreating randomly, but being destroyed systematically. Hours passed, but the battle did not end. The swarm adapted. Their remaining ships combined into a massive living wall, stretching across the system. They lashed out at the human fleet with coordinated energy beams and tentacle strikes. Entire sections of human ships were damaged. Explosions tore across the void. Yet, humans did not falter. Every hit they suffered was met with retaliation. Every destroyed ship was replaced by another wave. Humans were not machines. They were relentless. Inside the Titan, Hale's calm voice cut through the chaos. Focus on their weaknesses. Hit the exposed segments. Do not waste ammunition on hulls that are intact. Predict, strike, repeat. A tactical officer looked at him in awe. Sir, they've never seen tactics like this. Hale simply replied, They will learn too late. Captain Chun, still near the remnants of the Swarm Command Corps, noticed something strange. The surviving swarm ships began moving erratically. Their formations broke apart. Some even collided with each other in confusion. She spoke quickly into her comm, Admiral, the enemy is losing coordination. Hale's voice responded immediately. Excellent. All units, advance. Push them to the outer edges of the system. The human armada moved forward like a tidal wave. Railguns fired continuously. Missiles streaked across space. Drones darted in and out, tearing at the weakened swarm vessels. The enemy was no longer organized. They were being hunted. Finally, after hours of relentless combat, the swarm began to retreat. Red dots on the sensor screens vanished slowly as the surviving ships fled deeper into uncharted space. Valoran officers cheered quietly, unable to believe what they were witnessing. Their system, which had been on the brink of total annihilation, was now safe. Admiral Hale remained calm. Do not celebrate yet, he said. The swarm will regroup. They will return. But today, humanity has shown the galaxy its strength. Captain Chen's squadron returned to fleet, their ships battered but functional. Sir, she said, the command corps is destroyed. The swarm lost its central coordination. Hale allowed himself a small smile. Well done, Captain. Today is a turning point. Across the galaxy, news of the battle spread. Alien civilizations who had been hiding in fear now whispered to humans. The species from a small, dangerous planet, the Death World, had arrived. They had fought against an enemy that had destroyed thousands of worlds and won. No one expected humans to be the galaxy's salvation. But now, one fact was undeniable. When the galaxy screamed for help, humanity answered. And far beyond the Valoran system, in the dark reaches where the swarm still lurked, something stirred. The creatures had survived, but they had learned. Humanity would face them again, and the next battle would decide the fate of the galaxy.